It would kill the past, and when that was dead, he would be free. It would kill the monstrous soul life, and, without its hideous warnings, he would be at peace. He seized the thing and stabbed the picture with it. This passage caught my eye as I saw the deadly flaw in Dorian's logic shortly before the reveal, immediately after this line. Simply writing to the side, "It would kill him," in the annotations, I realized that the painting, which seemed to represent his soul, kept Dorian alive. This brought up the question: if Dorian's soul is stored in the painting, does his body contain one? Viewing the book with this in mind reframes Dorian's actions as those of a man living as a soulless husk. Rather than living a moral life, Dorian lets himself fall into base instincts, becoming more of an animal than a man, although he still retains enough reason to be cunning. Therefore, when Dorian erroneously wishes, "If it were only the other way! If it were I who was always young, and the picture that was to grow old! For that I would give everything! Yes, there's nothing in the whole world I would not give. I would give my soul for that!" With this interpretation, he did give his soul for that. For a while, he is able to coast on his prior blank slate personality. However, Dorian allows himself to be influenced in a nasty way and eventually causes the suicide of his lover, Sybil Vane. Dorian falls in love with an actress named Sybil Vane and very quickly offers to marry her. What Dorian could not realize is that he did not really love her for her. He loved her art. On a fateful evening, Dorian went to a show with Lord Henry, his toxic influence, and Basil, his artist friend. However, expecting another stunning performance from Vane, he is shocked to see that she was terrible. Confronting her about this, he was ruthless. She said it was wonderful because the bad acting had meant that she felt real love for him. I wish I had that same excuse. Dorian's love for her was gone. Abandoning her, he went home and was shocked to find his painting had a terrible smirk on it. Scared by this, he resolved to do better and go back to Sybil Vane. In the morning, Lord Henry would inform him that Vane had killed herself. Beyond this, Lord Henry convinces Dorian that this death was disconnected from him, and he thus becomes a spectator of his own life to escape its suffering. Dorian finally realizes that not only has Lord Henry explained him to himself, but has in fact made the decision for him. Lord Henry's convincing undercuts Dorian's free will by providing him with effectively one option. He could no longer apologize in return to her, so, believing himself unable to be forgiven, he decided to give in to hedonism and let his sins corrupt the painting without consequence. In this moment, Dorian makes his erroneous wish into more of a contract. Dorian finds himself incapable of deviating from the brutish nature he is developing, other than a few instances of him talking about change, but not really actually doing anything. Every time Dorian speaks of how he can do better, he stops once he realizes it would be too hard. His conscience is now separated from his body, and like Pinocchio, this means he has an easier time ignoring it. Therefore, Dorian can lose his soul in the painting. Dorian gives in to his animalistic instincts by now and pursues a hedonistic lifestyle. He is base, cruel, and pleasure-seeking, but still remains calculated enough to cover some of his tracks. Dorian has reverted to what philosopher Thomas Hobbes believes is humanity's default state: evil. Without consequence, he can do everything his id tells him to. And he does. Eternal youth, infinite passion, pleasures subtle and secret, wild joys and wilder sins. He was to have all these things. All of this is what Thomas Hobbes argues we would do if allowed to. Hobbes considers humanity's natural state as one of evil, which is the default without the order and incentive of laws. Dorian, losing his incentive by losing all sense of consequence, has become what Hobbes predicted. Hobbes also wrote about violent passions which dominate humanity in this state. Dorian is also dominated by his impulse and his hedonistic lifestyle. The largest culmination of this is the murder of Basil, when he kills him simply due to a hatred overtaking him briefly. This is exactly what Hobbes would predict as well, given his belief in an intrinsic capacity to kill.
Aren't you supposed to be talking about the separation of the soul?
He actually has a great point. Hobbes' philosophy is about humanity's state without laws, not soul. Well, in this case, the soul as the core and representation of Dorian's moral state, being separated from him leaves him with one thing: his base animalistic urges. If Hobbes is correct, Dorian would be a perfect example of his ideas. The idea that the soul can be separated from the body is not original to this theory about Dorian Gray. In Dante's Inferno, Dante meets one Friar Albergio, who is in hell despite still being alive. How may my body fare up in the world, no knowledge I possess? Such an advantage has this Ptolemy, that oftentimes the soul descendeth here sooner than Atropos in motion sets it. Know that as soon as any soul betrays, as I have done, his body by a demon is taken from him. In this passage, Friar Albergio's soul is taken straight to hell for committing betrayal, and a demon takes his place. He has no chance at forgiveness, and Dante likely believed that the friar would not have sought it anyway. In a similar way, Dorian has placed his soul into a hell of its own within the painting, constantly rotting and decaying, feeling all the effects of his sins as a demon controls his body. However, the demon is still himself. Dorian is largely unfeeling to his sins. For example, after killing Basil, his night had been untroubled by any images of pleasure or pain, but youth smiles without any reason is one of its chiefest charms. Other times, he makes excuses to avoid all guilt, like after causing Sybil's suicide. Cruelty? Had he been cruel? It was the girl's fault, not his. He has separated himself from his conscience, making it easier to sacrifice his moral being, his soul. These things are really good. But how would Dorian continue to function without a soul? Well, I think he would stay on the same path he set himself on, which is exactly what he does. Dorian decides to let his soul become rotten and dedicate his life to hedonism. He lets his excuses and prior actions push him further into this path. Every time he tries to break from it, he fails. He has become addicted to evil. Hedonism has become his life. In a way, he can't escape, or else he'd have nothing. He lives unwilling, or unable, to escape the cycle of addiction he had gotten himself into. Dorian, on breaking from his path, predestined himself into continuing his life of evil. He is a shell, filled only by the gas of sin, and his soul within the painting is subject to the fruits of his body's deeds. So when Dorian decides to kill the painting, unknowing that it would be his ultimate undoing, he, a body of hedonistic addiction and evil, kills the soul. He is killed by the addiction he thought he would never experience the consequences of. Like so. However, I haven't been entirely honest with you. While this is an interesting interpretation of the text, it doesn't hold up to every detail. For example, Dorian, while often unfeeling, also experiences guilt to some degree. Beyond this, he is able to make his own choices. While he fails to repent, there are times he at least decides to try. He is a tragic figure because he is so close to changing until his despair or laziness prevents him. If he was totally severed from his soul, he would likely have no urge to change. Rather, he does not experience the consequences of a troubled soul, with all of those transferring to the painting. Like a person who does not experience pain, not knowing what hurts you can lead you to get hurt. Instead, the painting represents his level of evil, or lack thereof. Not his good or evil, because he is very neutral when the book begins, rather than being truly good. Yet the painting still starts beautiful. Dorian could have changed. There's evidence all over the book for this. For instance, the words Basil says shortly before his death. "It is never too late, Dorian." Isn't there a verse somewhere? "Though your sins be as scarlet, yet I will make them white as snow." Instead, Dorian, as a soulless husk, seems to be how he sees himself. He believes himself too far gone to be saved. He lets his despair guide his actions, which is possibly a future video subject here, or, if you're my professor, hello, thank you for introducing me to this amazing book, the subject of my prior short paper. Dorian believes the painting to show all of his soul, as he says to Basil, "I shall show you my soul." Therefore, his soul must be gone. He must be a husk. He must be in hell. Thank you for watching. Oh, good stuff.